Hi, I'm Betty. Welcome to my kitchen. We're having an early Christmas celebration tomorrow with our younger daughter and her family. And when I asked which of the cookies she would most like to have, I really knew what the answer would be: chocolate tarts. I've been making them for, over 40 years, and they're a big hit every year. So I'd like to share that recipe with you today. And I have my ingredients ready. In my mixer, I have 4 ounces, 1 stick of butter at room temperature, and I'm going to start beating that. The other ingredients are a cup of sugar, 2 squares of 2 ounces of unsweetened chocolate, melted and slightly cooled, 2 cups of flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 egg at room temperature, and a little bit of red food coloring. So here we go. I'm going to start adding the cup of sugar now. Just a little at a time. I've added the last of the sugar, and now I'm going to turn the mixer on to medium to high speed and let it go for about a minute to get this nice and light and fluffy. All right, that's reached the desired texture, and now I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients apart from the flour. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, get that out, an egg, which, as I said before, is at room temperature, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of red food coloring. I'm using a gel food coloring, so I'm just going to drop in about a 1/4 teaspoon. All right, and I'm going to also add the chocolate, which, as I said, is 2 squares of unsweetened chocolate that has been melted and slightly cooled. You don't want to add really hot chocolate to your butter, because what it'll do is really melt the butter, and that will affect the finished texture of your tart. Scrape that off. And now we're going to give these ingredients a good mix. That looks good. Now I'm going to start adding the flour, and like the sugar, I'm going to do that gradually. Just a little at a time. As soon as that looks as though it's well incorporated, I'm going to stop the mixer and add some more. When you're making cookies, you don't want to overbeat the flour, since beating develops gluten, and gluten will make your cookies tough. So just a little more at a time. And I use this stop and start motion so that I don't get a cloud of flour in my face. All right, I can see that all of the flour has disappeared. The dough has come together, and so now I'm going to turn it out on my counter and just gather this into a disc. Just scrape this little bit off my paddle. As you can see, this paddle has these rubber fins on it. If I didn't have this, I would have had to stop and scrape the bowl down much more frequently. This is just one of my favorite gadgets. Okay, just scrape this to get it all out. And I'll grab my sheet of wax paper here. It looks a little crumbly, but you'll see I'll gather it with my hands and it'll form into a nice dough. It's much more moist than it looks. You just use the wax paper to help you gather it. And flatten it more or less into a disc. And I'm going to wrap this, and it's going to go into the refrigerator for 30 minutes. While your dough is chilling for its 30 minutes, it's time to prepare the tart pans that you'll use for these little tarts. I have these little tiny ones, which are a little more than an inch in diameter, and as you can see, are fluted. I've searched and searched and unfortunately can't find a source for these. I also have these lovely 2-inch tart pans, which I purchased from Bridge Kitchenware. And failing all that, you can use a mini muffin tin. You can check my kitchen store on my website at bettyskitchenfare.com, and you may find something there. So what I've done is I've melted 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, and just using a small pastry brush, I'm going to thoroughly brush these tart pans. A soft brush is good because it gets into all these little indentations. Just using this size tart pan, you'll get about 6 dozen of these. Of course, if you use something larger, your yield will be less. But then maybe people will only eat 1 instead of 2 or 3. Now that the dough has chilled and I've gotten all my tart pans greased, I'm just going to start pinching off small pieces of this dough and placing them in the tart pan. Once I've got all that done, what I'll do is just press it down and push it up the sides as evenly as I can. And then I'll go around and just pinch the edges. This gives a really nice finished look to the tart. There, if you can see that. So I've got 6 dozen of these to go. It's going to take a while, but as you can see, you get a big batch, and trust me, the finished product is worth the time involved. If you're going to be using a larger tart pan like this one, it's pretty much the same procedure. Just press the tart dough in. I might need a smidgen more here. In professional bakeries, what they do, literally is weigh out each piece of dough on a digital scale so that they're all exactly the same. I just eyeball it, and I've had fairly good success with that. So you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to pinch around the edge like this to give the tart that nice professional finished look. Like so. And you would do this if you aren't using this. If you're using a mini muffin tin, you would do exactly the same thing. My tarts are all shaped and they're ready to go into my oven, which is preheated at 350 degrees for 15 minutes. My chocolate tarts are ready to come out of the oven. And I'm going to just move them over and let them sit until they're just cool enough to handle. And then I will start taking them out of the tart pans. You can put them on a cooling rack to cool, but I'm just popping them onto my stovetop, which is cool. And I'll let them sit for about 5 minutes, just until I can handle them. Right, the tarts have cooled for about 5 minutes. I'm just going to take the tip of a sharp knife and gently ease it out a little bit, just till I can feel it go, and then I can pop it out of the pan. I'm going to proceed with the rest of these, and when I've got them all done, we'll be back to prepare the fudge filling. I know these are very labor intensive, but believe me, they are worth it. I've assembled all the ingredients to fill our fudge tarts. I've got 1½ cups of sugar, 3 tablespoons of light corn syrup, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 stick of butter, 1/3 cup of milk, and 1½ squares or 1½ ounces of unsweetened chocolate. And I'm simply going to put all of these in a pot and bring them to a boil. So here goes my sugar, butter, 1/3 cup of milk, 1½ ounces of unsweetened chocolate, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 3 tablespoons of light corn syrup. Now I'll just turn the heat on and let this melt and come to a boil, and give it a stir. All right, it's been about 4 minutes and the chocolate is almost melted, and I can see some bubbles starting to form around the edge, so we're almost there. Make sure all of the sugar is really melted. When I finish this, I'm going to beat it with my hand mixer. You'll see I'm just going to use one blade. You can, of course, beat it by hand, but it does take a while, and I find it's easier to do with a mixer. Incidentally, you could, of course, make this entire cookie using a hand mixer. You don't have to have a big stand mixer. The hand mixer will do the job nicely. All right, let's just see if this is actually boiling. I would call that a simmer, not quite at a boil yet. And I can see the sugar isn't entirely melted. The mixture has come to a good rolling boil, so I'm going to take it off the heat, or just onto my counter here, and using a mixer, I'm just going to use one blade. I don't want to incorporate a lot of air. I just want to beat this until it starts to cool and thicken slightly. It'll take a few minutes. I've been beating this for about 5 minutes and it is just starting to thicken. So now I'm going to bring it over, ready to start filling our fudge tarts. Inevitably, 1 or 2 of these will not come out perfectly, but don't throw them away. Those are known in the trade as cook's treats. Now to fill them, you can use a small spoon and just drip that mixture in. So I'll take a couple. But this is a pretty tedious process. So I'm going to show you one of my favorite tricks. To make this filling process much easier, what you want is one of these squeeze bottles, a fairly good sized one. They come with a nozzle and you can cut the tip to pretty much whatever size you want. I'm going to use a funnel and just, pour this filling in. Let that drip through. This just saves so much time. If you're using the spoon method, you may find that you have to reheat the filling before you're finished. It will get too thick to really pour easily. All right, that just has to drip through. Give it a little shake here to help it along. This is quite rich and quite delicious. As I said, these are labor intensive, but give them a try and I think you'll find they're worth the effort. Just pick a day when you really don't have much else to do. All right, I've got most of that. Now I'm just going to pop on the top. Make sure that's on securely. And start filling these tarts. Don't overfill. Whoops. You can see that this is a much easier method than the old spoon method. And I'll just continue filling these, and then they're just going to sit until they're set. They set into quite a firm fudge filling. Here are our finished chocolate tarts. I suspect if you put a few of these out for Santa Claus, you might get a really nice present. I hope you'll give them a try. For further information and even more recipes, please visit my website.